It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams, ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now. In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Well, Quanell and loyal viewers, this is a much closer to home story. We are talking about Airbnb's being out of control, and that video of men in the street revving engines and walking around with what appears to be either semi-automatic or fully automatic assault rifles was just half a block away from my home in the quiet residential inner city neighborhood of Montrose here in Houston, Texas. It was, and if y'all have noticed, we've had some reruns for the last couple of weeks. I had a major surgery 10 days ago, and that was the cause of that. And despite being in a medicine-induced sleep, I was woken up from the sounds of drag racing. I have since spoken with my neighbors who are closer to it and watched videos of people throwing smoke bombs, hanging out the windows of vehicles with rifles. And I've done some digging into these Airbnbs that are in the neighborhood. This one Airbnb has a small 2,100 square foot or so 4-bedroom house. My neighbors inform me that it's been filled with bunk beds in some of the areas, and that instead of saying, "Hey, I've got a 4-bedroom house, 8 occupants," the listing combined, I think, with a town, another small or similarly sized or smaller townhouse, suggests that 33 people can occupy this short-term rental, right? So while Airbnb has a prohibition of parties, they apparently are circumventing it by maximizing the number of people that are allowed to stay at the house. So what we had was drag racing. We had people walking around with rifles, waving around, directed at other people's houses. We had several of the neighbors videoing from the outside. The police were called, 911 was called, but of course they showed up much later. And when it all died down, and there were people, I talked to some of my women in my neighborhood that were absolutely terrified. What I only thought was going on, because I couldn't see all this, was the drag racing that was captured by my security cameras. But this has become an all too common issue. In the experience I've had to date, the roadblocks I've had dealing with both contacting the owner and the host, and apparently the host leases the house from the owner and then rents it himself on Airbnb. And then with Airbnb, it's just been kind of apathy, misleading statements, and absolute roadblocks. In fact, I had a conversation with Airbnb yesterday where I was being very polite, but saying, "Hey, I want answers to this. I want to know how this doesn't violate policy." And then the one Airbnb person I talked to reported to the other Airbnb person that I was using abusive language and that I was being dishonest, right? And then I had to challenge that. They were supposedly sending me a recording of it. It all seems kind of Kafkaesque and insane. And according to my neighbors, this is a recurring issue that they're dealing with, the people that live directly near it, over and over and over again, and they're scared and they're unhappy. So then I started looking at it, and this is happening all over Houston and happening all over America. And despite it seems like, despite Airbnb saying, "Oh, no parties," that really it's kind of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, no party situation. And there's really very, very little effort to protect communities. Now, I also, because I posted this on my Instagram at Big Angry Law, I had some people making comments that, "Oh, I don't support the Second Amendment for people of color," as if I was just upset that it was black men that were waving around the rifles. If you're pointing rifles at people's homes, that's deadly conduct. It's a crime in Texas. And I wouldn't care if you're white, brown, black, Asian, plaid, green, whatever. I don't want you doing it. And I don't think people on quiet residential streets want you doing it. It just seems kind of crazy. And why you'd want to do that at a party, it just seems kind of crazy. Equally, I find people that say things like, oh, this is black activities. I find that to be racist, right? And I'm not trying to encourage racism. What I'm trying to encourage is responsibility and rules. Now, the city of Houston has enacted a new framework that goes into effect in January that requires some licensing and some registration and this and that. It doesn't seem to be stuff that's going to address the problem. And at least to this point, it doesn't seem that Airbnb is regressive about addressing it. And some of my neighbors said they've reached out to both the city and Airbnb to no avail. But Quanell, you live, and I'm not going to say what part, but in a beautiful suburb in a beautiful part of Houston, in a beautiful property. And this has been happening in the suburbs as well. And I'd love to hear your perspective as an activist for the Black community, because frankly, it is very, there's a lot of, with the videos you see online with this sort of horror, does seem to be overwhelmingly African American. Now, that might just be bias in social media. But what are your thoughts? Should this be okay or should it be prohibited?
Charles, first of all, let me say this, man. Welcome back to the show. You know,
Thank you.
it's good to see you back on the mic and speaking before the people, the faithful followers, and those who love this show, Fox Face Off here on Fox Soul. And I give you credit for being open with the people that you were gone because you had surgery. And recovering from penile implant surgery is really a challenging surgery for people. And so, man, I'm happy to see you back and here and back on Face Off. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me say this. The video that I was able to witness provided to us by Mr. Charles recovering from a serious surgery. In that video, these black men were walking around with assault rifles. But in Texas, you can walk around with an assault rifle. It's legal. It's not against the law. He said some of his neighbors saw young African-American men pointing at
Yeah,
their
the
homes
video
with
shows it.
rifles. But we've heard Karens who see black men in the neighborhood tell lies on
That's what I
black men
thought
all
I'd
the
get from
time.
you. Yeah.
The video that I witnessed, I did not see black men pointing rifles at anyone, but they were carrying them legally down. In Texas, you have white guys that walk the streets, ride around in vehicles with assault rifles every day of the week, claiming they're going deer hunting and going to shoot skeet hunting, but with automatic weapons. But even you, Charles, kind of embellished it. You said walking around with semi-automatic weapons or fully automatic weapons when
No, they
there is
look like machine
nothing
guns. They look
in
fully
the
automatic
video,
to me.
nothing in the video that suggests that they were fully automatic weapons, which is against federal law, but even suggests that they're semi-automatic because nothing was fired and nothing was shot. Here's the root cause of these problems. America's asking Airbnb to do something that Airbnb can't do, to police these parties. You really can't do it because if you're knocking from 30 people to just 10 people, the problem is social media. Once you have a party designed for just 5 or 10 of you all, if you put it on social media, we having a party, we having to get together, 300 and 400 people show up. The problem is when people put party information on social media, then you bring people from all over the place that you don't know and that don't know you. So they have no skin in the game to respect your residents. They have no skin in the game to protect the sacred bond of your friendship. So you got strange people from everywhere. And what happens is people who don't like each other from different neighborhoods all come together in this one neighborhood where they're renting this Airbnb and crimes are taking place. But Airbnb cannot do more than what the American problem is with these parties. You got teenage people being shot, teenage people being killed, star athletes from Utah, star athletes from Alabama. You just name it. These people are being killed, these Airbnb parties, because they're being promoted on social media. But that's not something we really want to talk about.
Well, I mean, we're here talking about it, but you led with, oh, we were embellishing. First of all, no, the shooting smoke bombs off in the street, drag racing in the street, having a giant party in the middle of an incredibly, I live in one of the most diverse neighborhoods in America, right? I live in Houston's historic gay neighborhood that has become incredibly ethnically diverse, right? So this isn't an issue of Karens, like one of the video. I mean, you just assume these are white women because you're a racist, but no, I've been sent two videos. One from a Latino woman who took a video while hiding of people it's throwing off smoke bombs and right sitting in the window of the car waving the rifles around, and they are either semi-automatic or fully automatic. They're one or the other, right? from me and my incredible experience with
So where's the
firearms, which is
crime
pretty
being committed, though?
tremendous, right?
What was the
Well, when you
crime?
wave it around, right? If you're
That's
waving it
not a
around like these
crime.
jerks are,
If you
it
wave
is.
it,
It's
if
called
you
deadly.
no,
It's
if
called
you're
deadly
holding it in the
conduct. If you
air,
point it at someone's
no.
house,
If you
if you
wave it at
brandish it
somebody's
and point it
property,
at
if you
someone's
point it,
house,
you got
that
to
is
point it,
deadly
not wave
conduct
it.
or aggravated assault with a
Not if
deadly
you're waving.
weapon.
You got to point it at someone or somebody's property for it to become a crime. If you
Right,
hold it
that's
in
what
the
I'm
air
talking. What, are
and
you not
wave it
listening
back
to
and
me?
forth,
Are you
that's
just
not a
so caught
crime.
up in your anti-white racism that you're not hearing me? I'm saying if you point it at someone's home, that's deadly conduct. If you point it at someone, that's aggravated assault with a deadly
But
weapon.
where's the
What they
video of them pointing at people's homes?
Okay, I sent you the best video that I have, which is them waving it around in the middle of the street, revving their engines, getting ready for their Too Fast, Too Furious drag racing, which I have videos of
That's
that
illegal.
from my
That's
security
illegal.
camera. Right? Wait, that's what? That's legal to drag race?
I said that's illegal.
Okay, you're right. But it's also illegal to have big, loud, giant parties. And now allegedly, Airbnb has banned it, right? They've said no parties. But if you can do a listing of two small units that you deceptively make seem like one, fill one with bunk beds, and claim that it's for 33 people, that's like an event center masquerading as a short-term rental. There are people finding workarounds, and Airbnb, at least to my experience today, doing absolutely nothing about it, except the only thing I've got is a threat to throw me off their platform, which is perfectly fine with me because I don't use it. I think I used
Well,
it
they said you were
years ago
cursing.
and had a
They said you were
horrible
being
experience.
angry and mean-spirited to the person you were talking to. They said you cursed her out.
I actually did. I insisted. I was very nice because I knew they were recording. It was funny when I talked to the host, right? He was being kind of smug and dismissive, right? And first like asked me my address, thought I got the sense he thought I was lying about living near there and being a lawyer. I was very smug. But then he started saying the same kind of stuff that I was being like threatening. And I said, well, it's fine. I've recorded this from the beginning. And then all of a sudden his tone completely changed. Because people are bullies, right? And they see what they can get away. And Airbnb is an economic bully. It's a juggernaut that is actually creating, and you're talking about people like the Utah and Alabama, both African-American athletes this year killed at Airbnb parties. So people want to frame it as, oh, well, you only care because it's black guys waving the rifles around. I care about the black young men and women being killed at these things.
But
I
what
care about
about
the
these
neighborhoods
white
being
frat
destroyed.
parties? What about these white college parties at Airbnb?
Oh, yeah.
What about these drunken
Absolutely.
brawls
I
at
want them to
Airbnb
be
for
illegal as
white
well.
college students
I
holding these
absolutely
parties
want
at
them to be
Airbnb?
illegal as well. We are not
But
seeing
you
all
don't
the
talk about
shooting
them
and
white
violence
suburban
at those
children
parties.
having them
But
Airbnb
I don't
parties,
support those either.
college fraternal parties where women are being raped, men are being sodomized, men are being beaten up, women being beaten up. These Airbnb parties with white college fraternity parties with
I
drunken
think they
brawls
should be
everywhere.
illegal as well.
I'm not a Trump supporter, never had been, never will be. But I gotta admit, this one charismatic. Oh, shut up, we know. Listen, I know you're a supporter because you won't shut the but if you don't shut the up, I'm gonna put my in your mouth. I don't want them to be thrown out because trust me, here's what I'm saying. Here's where you're turning this into a political thing when this is a comedy show. This is a comedy show. You all in your feelings over Trump, and this is a comedy show.
In this round, here's Quanell X.
Charles, that was a comedian who was being heckled by a member of the audience, a female, a white female, was heckling him when he brought up the subject of Donald Trump being a very charismatic figure, very polarizing figure, which Donald Trump is. But he became angry and upset that as a comedian, he's not being allowed to do what comedians do, which normally they should have the right to poke fun at anything and poke fun of everybody because you're there for comedy, you're there for laughter, not real politics. Though they tend to make fun of politicians and the political environments of the day, he was angry that she was heckling at him. But I was truly hurt by how my brother handled that situation. Uh, I would like to say to our brother, I love you, brother. And I believe that you really are strong and passionate about your craft being a comedian in the world of comedy. And you had a point, dear brother. She should not make it into politics, but the way you handled her, brother, saying stick your DICK in her mouth, calling her the B word over and over. Dear brother, every woman, no matter her political view, no matter how passionate she may be about a political side of the fence that you may not be, you should never address a woman in that manner. That is still somebody's daughter, perhaps somebody's mother, and maybe somebody's wife. But I was shocked at the white guy who was with her, her date or her husband, because had it been me, I'd have jumped up on that stage, Tony, and you and I'd had to go blow for blow, brother, because you went way, way overboard with that. And I could just imagine if that was a white comedian and a black woman in the audience, we as black people would be outraged if a white dude handled a black woman like that at a comedy show. We have to be just exactly outraged and angry with our brother and how he handled this situation. It was highly inappropriate, even though it was a comedy show.
Yeah, I never know, especially when one of you or Matt suggests a topic where you're going to come from. And of course, I didn't expect this. I will say that, I go to a lot of comedy. I have a bunch of professional comedian friends, and, my wife's a big fan of the art form. Me, I'm a big guy. I feel kind of cramped in those spaces, but there's nothing more narcissistic than interrupting someone's performance for whatever reason, whether it's political or not. I don't think she did much initially other than groan and boo, which I think is it goes alongside with laughing as an appropriate response. And I felt like Aries kind of targeted her, and I felt like his crowd work in that situation was very lazy to suggest she should be raped. The Bill Cosby reference, to talk about to try to emasculate the man that was with her by talking about putting his penis in her mouth and that kind of stuff. I thought it was lazy comedy. I've seen Aries before. He does great impressions. He doesn't have a tremendous amount of actual work, right? He doesn't have a great act other than the impressions. I find him to be a very funny guy. I did not there. I don't think he's the bad actor in this situation, though. I think because after her initial groan, she just kept wanting to talk about it. And that's not why you're there. You're not there at a comedy show so people in the audience can usurp the time and get their own attention and their own platform. Like, you shouldn't talk at a comedy show unless someone's talking, unless the comedian's asking you questions, right? And now sometimes they can be rude. I had when I had a longer beard, I had an African American comedian. I wasn't saying anything. I was just sitting there, refer to me as Santa KKK Claus, just because I was a bald white guy with a beard. Now, I didn't crash out over it, right? Like you're talking about, if you would have insulted, you'd have got up and fisticuff. I don't think we should be encouraging anyone.
If
Like, I
you're
think
sitting
the
there
white
with
guy,
your wife, if you're sitting there with your wife and a man is on stage calling her the B word over and over, and on several occasions, I'll to stick my DIC in your mouth.
I'd have
Are you
probably
gonna sit
left.
there? Are you gonna sit there?
Hold on. Yeah, I'm not going to crash out in the club. I'd have probably left. If I'd have seen him on the street afterwards or ever again, or seen him in a bar, we'd have probably had words. And it had probably been too, what's the word you used, punctified, to want to do anything about it, right? Because I do have a capacity for violence, but I
Well,
don't.
we'd have been violent that night.
I would
If
not
you
have interrupted.
and
I wouldn't have Will Smith charged the stage with Chris Rock, which I think has derailed Will's
oh,
career and it's
he
been
went
schmucky.
way too far, Charles.
Right. Well, I don't think I mean,
Because
like,
what
if
he
I
was
was the guy
saying
in the
was no
stand,
longer
maybe I would
comedy.
have clapped back on my way to leaving,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't have crashed out
but he went
and
beyond comedy with that.
violence. But
He
see,
went
none
beyond
of that was comedy. And
he
that's
went
the real
beyond it.
problem, right? So the day after the last presidential election, I happened to be in New York. I had early voted. I was in New York for the day of the election. But the day after Trump had won, I was at the Comedy Cellar, probably the most famous comedy club in America. You're kind of excited. They're hard to get tickets. I had actually called a comedian, Colin Quinn. Thank you, Colin, for getting us the tickets. And we were there. We had tickets to a play that we skipped to go do that instead. And the host got up there and said, "What am I going to tell my nieces?" And then every comedian but one, Colin, and another one too, I think two comedians out of like 10 comedians, instead of telling jokes, just got up there and were big giant crybabies about Trump winning. Instead of getting up there and busting on Kamala, busting on Donald, and just making light of it and giving the laughs, they were just literally being big giant babies. What I don't want at a comedy show is I don't want hecklers like this woman interrupting. Right? She was just a narcissist that needs to learn to shut up. I don't want my comedians just being rude, right? Just saying, "Oh, I want to Bill Cosby her." I want jokes and I want laughs. And I think that's what we should all experience, except for the comedian who I think should experience the courtesy of being able to run his mouth without being interrupted. Like, I got to do with you every damn day.
I agree with you on him being interrupted. I agree that she should have understood that's comedy and that's not the place for real political debate outside of comedy. But Charles, to make reference to a man's wife or a man's woman about she should be raped and make reference that
Yeah, it's horrible.
organ down her mouth on multiple occasions and call her the B word. That's not comedy anymore, brother. And when I
Well, I
watch
just think Aries doesn't have enough jokes, right? I think that's
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.